we'll move ahead with our day as per the schedule, and I would like to introduce our senior most faculty involved in the panelists, Dr. Sunanda Kohli Reddy. She is a developmental pediatrician working in New Delhi, and her special interest is early intervention for children with neurodevelopmental problems. I would like to say, and I would like to acknowledge her contribution in this sector, as Dr. Sunanda is one of the first persons to start working on the early intervention approach in our country. So definitely we have a very big personality amongst us today. She is also actively involved in research, health promotion, care provider training, and community-based initiatives promoting abilities of children with developmental disabilities. Through the various programs of Center for Applied Research and Education on Neurodevelopmental Impairments and Disability-Related Health Initiatives, New Delhi, which she heads. Care Nidhi is the short form of the community which she heads. She attempts to combine her academic interest and experience in the field of developmental pediatrics with the core work of Care Nidhi through grassroots convergence programs in partnership with other institutions and groups working in the areas of implementation research and policy. Uh, as a parents of specially able children, we all are so much aware about the importance of early intervention, and it would give me more than pleasure to introduce one of the pioneers of early intervention in our country, Dr. Sananda. Over to you. Welcome, madam.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers, Harshali ji and SNIC team for inviting me. And I would like to say a special thank you to Dr. Bodhankar sir and the ComHat family for introducing me to this wonderful parents group and giving me an opportunity to speak today. Actually, I was listening this morning to a lot of people, parents, I would say experts. Parents are experts. And I also know the program has an array of experts speaking on a wide variety of topics that are lined up in the next 3 days. As I was listening to the morning session, and now, because I joined a little early, I know that the topic I'm going to deal with is going to raise a lot of questions, more so from professionals. And I chose this topic because it is a topic after my heart, and it is something that is coming of age now after 2 decades of the concept that was introduced. In fact, the nice presentations in the morning showed me that families were able to deal with the changes in the COVID phase. And that's because families, and particularly mothers, actually have an important role to play in the management, everything of the children with disabilities. And I always recognize mother as the first therapist and the first teacher. So I'm very happy to be talking about this. My topic for the day and in my work over the years, I have noticed that more than any special therapies or treatment modalities, it's the children with family supports who actually make very good progress. Not to get me wrong, yes, therapies are important. Therapists and all professionals play an important role. But again, when we see that we give the same kind of therapies to all children, why is it that some do better than the others? So this is what made me look into this. And as Saumil ji said, I had the advantage of being among the early ones in the field for early intervention. However, my work, which started off with research, training, everything, made me move into communities. So today I would say the work that I do has taken a different form. It has evolved into a form which actually forms the topic of my topic of the day. The topic is family-centered services for early intervention of children with developmental disabilities. And I'm presenting this, actually it is more of a philosophy and perspectives that I'll be presenting today. It will be perspectives presented in ICF framework. And this actually, because this talk needs me to explain both family-centered services and the ICF framework, I'm actually placing early intervention in that framework. So my talk will today have less to do with early intervention or various approaches to early intervention, and it's more about the framework of ICF that I'll be speaking about. Family-centered services. Actually, this is an approach to care that recognizes that the family is constant in a child's life. All of us professionals have a role to play, but it is the parents who know their children best and want the best for their children. This family-centered services approach was becoming popular around 2001. Though it was initiated much earlier. It was initiated, in fact, as early as 1988. And I had a short stint in Canada when it was actually getting accepted as an approach for intervention of children with disabilities in any settings for that matter. It was actually, when it started, it was multidisciplinary teams in institution settings who saw that this is going to be very important. This approach actually builds on partnership between parents and professionals. So here, nobody is superior, but somewhere we have to understand that when it comes to the child, it's the parents who know more. And again, I would say, families are different, just like children with disabilities, children with neurodevelopmental disabilities are different, and each child is unique. So also with the families. For the same condition, let us say, example, autism or cerebral palsy. For the same condition, you find that each child has his own unique challenges. Each child is different in the way he takes therapy. So also with the families. Optimal child functioning, as I said, occurs within a supportive family. And when we say families, we're also taking the wider community into context. And these are the three basic premises on which family-centered services rest. I know from morning that this perhaps as a science or as a concept may be presented in a new way, but I know parents have already been understanding these principles and putting it into practice during this COVID phase. We all see how this is very necessary to involve all family members in the care of the child, and also to use the community services. When I say community, it needn't refer only to a poor community setting. Communities everywhere, whether it's rural, whether it's urban, whether it is, apartment complexes, or in a situation of institutionalized children, there it's also a community. But whatever supports are available to them in their neighborhood, I would refer to as the wider community, and all these contribute to a child's well-being. I think some of us have been saying, as an African proverb goes, that it takes a whole village to raise a child. While the mother is the main person, the mother needs the supports of the family, and the families are nested within the community. So just to elaborate on the guiding principles, I would like to say that there are 4 guiding principles, in fact. One is that each family should have the opportunity to decide the level of involvement in decision-making for the child. Yes, there are other caveats there. I'll come to it later. First, I'll just touch on the principles. The needs of family members should be considered when planning interventions, particularly in early interventions where the child is very dependent on the mother and the family, and the involvement of family should be encouraged. Service providers must provide information about accessible services, help parents make informed choices, and encourage use of community supports for families to build on whatever other strengths that they have. This is where I said, when we say family should have the opportunity to decide the level of involvement in decision making, it means also that they have to make informed choices. So we have a responsibility to inform the families, particularly the mother, the parents, what choices they have and what is best for the child, and explain to them why you're thinking of certain interventions. Parents, not only, now it may appear that the family-centered approach or family-centered care approach or services given through family-centric principles, it may appear that the families have a lot of rights. No, they also have responsibilities. Where there are rights, families or parents have the ultimate responsibility to the care of their children. So my talk today, as I said, is placed, whether it's early intervention in developmental disorders or the approach to the early intervention, the family-centered services, is actually placed in what is today getting popular as ICF framework. I'll have to explain ICF framework a little. Lot of developmental pediatricians, particularly those who deal with childhood disabilities and neurodevelopmental disabilities, are very familiar with this. The full form is International Classification of Functioning, or in fact, it was International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Health, which was revised again for the older kids. And this framework, it belongs to the class of WHO classification. Now, doctors and all medical professionals know that WHO classifications, there is a family of such classification like ICD-10, which is of course being revised, and ICD-11 is just coming. And similarly, DSM-5, there are a whole lot of classifications, but ICD-11 or ICD-10 and 11 will have to be supplemented by ICF classification, because people all over the world are recognizing the importance of functioning. There has been a move from medical model of dealing with disability towards biopsychosocial, because when I started in the field, as per, according to the introduction that was given more than 3 decades ago, it was actually, the medical model that was still dominating the scene. And there was this debate that was beginning about medical versus social model, and ICF just stepped in at that time to encourage the biopsychosocial model. However, it's taken a long time. In fact, it's exactly 2 decades since WHO adopted ICF classification. It was on May 22nd. In fact, in another 2 days, it will be exactly 2 years since WHO gave the classification. I will not go into the lot of details of the classification because that is not meant for this audience. However, the work that we do can be placed in the framework for ICF. So I shall deal with the principles, the application and perspectives of family-centered services in this framework. What is it that we want to do? Yes, whatever you want to do for the child with disabilities, whether you call it early intervention, whether you want to call it pediatric rehabilitation or something else, that what can be designed in this framework. And if it is early intervention that I'm looking at, how does it look when family-centered services are being given for that early intervention? So here is where I shall be using early child development almost synonymous with early intervention. Today, I'll not be speaking of the traditional early intervention in terms of whether mobility, hand function, communications, but I'll be placing everything within the holistic child development that we want to see. And the foundation principles, obviously, the whole classification came because of the approach that we need to look at functioning, not just what the child cannot do, but what the child can do. And that was the premise in which the framework came. And who does it? This, of course, everybody can do it. And in all settings, as I go along the talk, that will come along. And how it is done, because family-centered approach, while it sounds very simple, there are certain principles which are crucial to successful family-centered service approach. And there has been a lot of research on it. It's not just somebody just saying the family can do the work of the occupational therapist. No, it is not as simple as that. And there are principles to be followed. And then I will discuss a little more, which is how to integrate your early interventions with other things that matter a lot for the future development of the child. So briefly, International Classification of Functioning helps us describe disability in terms of health-related states. When we say health-related states, it is that we are moving from just looking at the child as child with a disability. As I said when I started, that we must recognize that it is a child first, and disability that is an attribute that adds on. So from a consequence of disease, we are moving towards components of health classification when we adopt the ICF classification. From the traditional approach, which saw impairment leading to disability if there was no correction on time, early intervention, in fact, all early intervention would say if you're not starting intervention early, this impairment will progress to disability. And if disability is allowed to progress without the timely correction or without the kind of supports the child requires, it can develop into a handicap. So there was also this whole approach which said, okay, a disability can turn into a handicap because the society is not actually helpful. So there was this raging controversy at the time this whole thing happened. And here, this approach actually describes domains from the perspectives of not impairment, disability, handicap, but in terms of functioning or whatever is restricting the function in terms of body, individual, and society. So broadly speaking, actually the classification is a little complex in its original form, but when we talk of a framework, it helps us simplify the concept further. So I'll be coming to that simplified drawing. And here you're looking at body functions and structure. And the other list actually concerns activities and participation. Now, there are some terms which are very important here, which we need to understand because we're moving into a classification which is stressing on functioning. What is functioning? Functioning actually is an umbrella term which covers body functions, activities, and participation. And then what is disability? Disability is actually now an umbrella term for impairments, activity limitation, and restrictions of participation, restrictions in participation. And with all these constructs, there are environmental factors that actually interact. In fact, contextual factors, the broad category of contextual factors has been again divided into environmental factors and personal factors, because we are all familiar, there is this nature-nurture controversy. There are certain personal factors like gender, age, and socioeconomic status. All these are personal factors into which the child is born or born with. And there are contextual factors, that is the situations, life situations the child finds himself or her in. In short, what this classification enables is profiling of individuals' functioning. And in our case, we are generally referring to children, the child's functioning, disability, and health. Again, the classification goes into further domains, so you can describe them into various domains, but the simplified drawing is this. This figure is just what I explained to you, and the body function, structure, activity, participation, 3 levels, and contextual factors, environmental and personal factors. Here we need to understand that there are a few important terms, and I'll just say that what is the difference between activity. Some people say the child has participated in all the activities. The child is actually in a play in this school, in the theater, or child is playing with other children. So that is actually activity, and that is not participation. Participation is involvement in a life situation. So a child with an autism can be playing, but again, you have to look at that as an activity. We want a participation in the activity. Participation restrictions are what individual may experience in a life situation as problems that limit them to participate. Environmental factors actually make up the physical, social, attitudinal environment, and in this classification, they become as important as the impairment that we used to refer to, or any body or body part is only half the story. The rest is the environment. So here now, if I'm coming back to after this short understanding of family-centered services, how do I place early intervention here? Early intervention, as all of you know, because I know in this gathering, whether it's the parents or the professionals, we all know that early intervention is the provision of developmental services very early in life for the child so that he or she can compensate for the developmental lag. I'm not going into a whole lot of why there is a lag, because I know that all these topics will be discussed over the next 2-3 days. Here in early intervention in family-centered services, we are not only in family-centered services, in any setting, what are we aiming at? We are aiming at achieving optimal functional efficiency for an improved quality of life. And this is a very important point. For instance, if we just don't want to make a leg straight by orthopedic surgery, why do we want the surgery? So that the child can walk. Similarly, we just don't want to reduce spasticity by giving Botox. We want that we take advantage of the difference in this tone for the child to have his movement. So actually, this is for an improved quality of life. So every intervention has to be, in fact, questioned whether it is making a difference in terms of the child's functioning. Or are we doing it because we just got used to doing it traditionally? And we all know early intervention for a child with neurodevelopmental disability is not just one person doing it, and it's not one intervention. Most of them require multisectoral interventions to promote those positive formative experiences and early learning opportunities. So here again, I'll be using less of the term early intervention, because what is the reason we want the early intervention? Is it for the child? And this is my favorite quote to all my staff when I teach them early intervention. Early intervention is for the child and the adult that he is to become. So we have to plan our early intervention, understanding the family. What does this child need to develop into a productive adult? And this, all our interventions must ensure that the child with special needs develops the usual traditional strengths anyway, motor, social, communication, cognitive and behavioral skills, along with enhancement of sense of competence, control and independence. We want to see that child grow into an adult with these qualities. You must teach them early. And all pediatricians and those who work with children are perhaps familiar with this picture of ecological model of development in which we base all our work. And Bronfenbrenner's theory of child development says that it's not just what the child is, not just the personal factors, and what impacts the development happens at various levels. Yes, the immediate is the microsystem, which is the, family, the parents, and the school that the child goes to. So all the services that are immediately impacting the child, including the hospital in which the child has gone in, or but again, there is an exosystem, which is the wider community, the friends and friends of family. They can be media, they can be so many other neighborhood aspects, like a play area. We say the child should play, but if the neighborhood is in an urban slum where there's not a single park, you have to remember that that's also going to affect the child. So, and between the exo and microsystem is how the interactions are between the families and the wider neighborhood, which we term the mesosystem. And then, of course, ultimately, we cannot escape the fact that government has to play a role, and people's attitudes, even the global. So in today's world, the global influences affect. If we are all handling mobile phones and doing these webinars, it is a global influence that we're today seeing. And early childcare development. Now I'm coming to the context in which we work for family-centered services. And then I would like to substitute the word early intervention with early childcare and development. And what does this mean? If we want to see a child develop holistically, it means the child's closest caring environment is very important for us to see that the child develops well. And particularly in developing countries, we have to integrate interventions to promote the family interface with all the programs that we are doing, health, habilitation. And again, as I said, there is an extended family of caregivers, whether it's Anganwadi workers, whether it's community health workers, rehabilitation workers, and all. So as I said, in center, you see these different domains in child development. Yes, all are important, and nutrition is placed there, which is also what early child development says is a very important thing, whereas the early traditional approach would not go into details of the nutrition history. But yes, that's very important. And you have to see that you are laying the foundations for holistic development. In fact, I tell my therapists, if a child is feeling so weak, is having malnutrition, and on top of it, you start your exercises, the child, you're just tiring out the child. In fact, the child cannot take the extra exercise that you are giving because the child hardly has any energy to move. So we need to look at the context and see that what all the child needs to develop are being made available as a part of early intervention. It is the same picture now, if you see how I'm contextualizing it to family-centered services for community-based inclusive development. And again, when you say inclusive development, it means that for tomorrow's future, the child's future, we want this child included in his school or with his family, not just be on the bed whereas his sisters and brothers are going to school. So inclusive development calls for a paradigm shift. And here it's not, the shift is from service delivery to promoting engagement for care and development in several dimensions. It's not just related to medical follow-up or to occupational therapy or speech therapy, but in different dimensions with the participation of families, because that's the only way you can promote the competencies. So I'll not be talking a lot on community-based rehabilitation. Yesterday, I listened to Dr. Bodhankar, and I know there are people going to discuss the urban and the rural CBR. But I wanted to say that in this framework, we have to widen what goes into the early interventions, keeping the fact that the child is going to be an adult soon. So let's say most of us focus on the health part, the prevention, the medical care, the rehabilitation, the assistive devices. Yes, but what next? Keep that in mind as we look at the interplay between individual experiences and the wider environment. So I won't go into again, as I said, but when we are saying this can be applicable in all settings, and how do we look at the child in poor community? For a child in communities like this, look at just that one room. So you're going to tell this child to do certain exercises in a certain way, and who is going to do those exercises? And for the child with special needs and the families and resource for community settings, there are multiple dimensions of poverty that add to the complexity. In fact, disability is only one aspect of the problem. So now again, I come to what do we do for these ECCD programs? Yes, CBR interventions are also the same interventions that we are trying to give in institutions, or whether we are in solo practice or working with NGOs like I used to. And much of my learning has come from NGOs at one point of time when I was in practice, and I learned a lot from families. I still continue to learn from parents. And here I must say that when we give an intervention, we want the child to practice, and practice of tasks. Here, the difference is that we encourage it in the child's natural settings, in school, at home, because I heard the discussion that preceded mine, that everybody is doing in play school, preschool, everything. Yes, that is what family-centered approach in ICF framework recommends, in fact. That doesn't decrease the role of the occupational therapist or the medical professional or a developmental pediatrician like me, but we can become the guide for the entire process. The goal-directed therapy that you're all familiar with. Here, I would say even the goals have to be wider, and it becomes activity-based functional therapy. Yes, activities are important to build practice time into daily activities. If a child is only doing, let's say, the half an hour of therapy session and then going back home and doing nothing, then that doesn't help. We need to build those into play activities at home and practice. We have to give goals for intervention beyond the gross motor or communication, because we need to prepare the child for school. There should be school readiness activities. Here, the hand function may be just scribbling on a piece of paper. And these have to be delivered through individual therapy sessions, group sessions, play, parent education, home programs. And I would say here, parent education is one of the most important things to lay the strong foundations. And I think because of time, I'll skip. Yes, they should be mostly given very early, 0 to 3 years. Why? Everybody today is talking about ECD in terms of why it should be early. People say it is a period for neuroplasticity, and you have to take that window of opportunity. It's not just the child's brain. In fact, the earlier you educate the parent, you are likely to reduce the period of phases of the grief, and the parent can quickly start what it takes for the child to start early intervention. Mother is the first interventionist. In fact, like Dr. Phadke yesterday said, we need also to think of the first 1,000 days, but that is outside the purview of this discussion. So I shall only stick to early intervention for children with disabilities. Now, all these have to be integrated with other service delivery, whether it's Anganwadi giving nutrition, or whether it's a hospital immunization program. Let us not forget that this is a child first and disability comes next. You have to ask every child who comes to your place for therapy or for anything, whether this child has had the routine immunizations, had, checked the weight and all these. And we are actually trying through all these interventions to improve the quality of life in the overall program that you're doing. So your early intervention as a therapist that you're giving will be more successful when you attend to these in a family-centered service approach. This is, of course, quickly to say that, yes, it is not very different. We still need assessments. We still need parent education counseling. But here you'll see everywhere there is a mother. Without the mother understanding it, we don't do. And the therapy for gross motor skills, for hand function, yes, it needn't be just, okay, you take this rubber and squeeze it hard. Yes, that's fine. That's a good play activity. But if there's a poor child, and mother is washing clothes, yes, why not? This child was not using a right hand, but when she had to wash clothes with the mother, you give the exercise for the right hand. And communication skills with preschool readiness training. These are only some of the interventions. I can't cover all in this short time. But as I said, the CBR metrics that we'll be talking about, sorry. This actually helps us widen our interventions, keeping in mind the biological factors, the environmental factors, and the social factors. And here, the key to success here is to involve the key care providers, who can be, Anganwadi workers, who can be grandmothers, who can be anybody in the family, sometimes siblings. Capacity building of key care providers becomes very important to sustain the change. Because first, yes, definitely it will be the professionals who start. But as the professionals are doing, the families, if they start learning, there's so much they can do at home. And in this approach to therapy, I would say it is very important to promote functional performance, identify periods of changes to try the task. This is very important. This is very important because it's not like anything you do anytime is the same. Identify and change the primary constraints in the task and the environment. And of course, as we generally do, all therapists do, all professionals do, encourage practice. I'll just go a little more about these principles, but after giving you a very important point is that a family-defined functional interventions are that the tasks which are the focus of the intervention, where the primary goal should be task accomplishment, not whether the child is doing it in a normal, typical way. So again, if let's say the child is walking, maybe the child is not walking properly. It does not matter. What we want is the child is walking. And so we have to identify what the task is and then modify the task attending to the environmental factors that are sort of hindering its progress a little. So this is an example. Activities of daily living, which are very important for all children and families. I decided to just take an example for this because, as I said, you need to identify the task and feeding problems. Most of these children have feeding problems. So let's say the feeding task, and you're trying to give this, wean this child from just taking milk or liquid food to solid, through the semi-solid phase. So you have identified that you want to focus on looking at what can enhance the performance. And here you say, yes, if a child is sitting in a chair straight and has functional use of arms, this child is able to feed better. Yet a child can be sitting in a chair and has the use of arms, but if there are attention problems, or if the child only associates mother feeding her, sometimes the child can't self-feed finger foods. So we definitely say, okay, use the food that she likes, use familiar utensils, and try to avoid a new or unfamiliar setting in the task as you're teaching. And again, the environment is very important. As I said here, in this approach, you have to look at environmental factors. And one of the things we see that when children eat with other children, or when the whole family is eating at the same time, it is easy. Yes, one of the common complaints I have is, ये ज़्यादा नहीं खाती, फिर नीचे गिराती रहती है, अगर इसको हमारे साथ बिठाएंगे, इसलिए अलग से खिलाना पड़ता है. yes, do that. You do that if you find that the child has not eaten enough, but always make it a habit to get this child some practice of eating with everybody, even if it's a little. If you feel the child is hungry, yes, give again another midday meal or something. And again, you have to see that there are no distractions in the environment. The table should not be cluttered. And today, of course, the mobile phone is the biggest distractor. You may be saying anything, but if you're looking at the mobile and asking the child to self-feed, it's not going to help. So the intervention focus has to be that you use a familiar chair, table for back support. If mother has to be there while you're giving practice, she can be in the room, but let an alternate caregiver or teacher step in the preschool. Then family should eat with minimum distractions, and you use the right size spoon or cup to enable this child to eat better. So this is where I said environment becomes very important. And it's not as if this is any odd thing, because one of the problems that comes with community-based inclusive development or CBR or family-centered is people think that, each house is very different and it's very difficult to standardize these. But there are certain ways, and there's a lot of research. I'll not go into detail here. And there's one of the things where, because generally we doctors, we professionals, therapists included, we are trying to analyze if the parents are doing their job well. But the parents now have a right to analyze if we are doing our job well. And both, in fact, because it's a partnership. So there is what is called the measures of process of care, MPOC, and the latest version is called MPOC 20, because when I started, there was an MPOC 56. It was a long questionnaire of 56 questions, but now it's been revised, validated, and a reliable measure to actually look for quality assurance in family-centered service approach. It's just a small self-report measure, so the parent herself knows whether there is a progress and whether the service provider is also letting her choose these in a right way. So I'll just say this is a very important framework for early child development or early child care development. And when we marry these two concepts of ICF to early intervention, what we see is ECCD in a family-centric model. So health, nutrition services, nurturing care for young children is very important. That is where the neuroplasticity, because this is not the topic for that, I'm not going to detail. Yes, the parent education, family support, all these actually are important to provide early learning opportunities, daycare, preschool. And then, as I said, according to the ecological model, you know that there should be a policy support to provide nurturing care. Again, if mother has no maternity leave, that's going to be a problem. There should be an enabling environment, system enablers to build capacity, and finance. That's also very important. And in community settings, as I said, the same framework can be used in preschools, in the neighborhood. The challenges are many because parents have to shoulder a lot of responsibilities. It varies from family to family, helping families cope up with the double whammy of poverty and disability. Because I know in today's meeting, I'm seeing a lot of empowered parents, and they're empowered with knowledge and skills, and they have good social support systems, apart from the fact that they have great professionals helping them. Whereas it's not the story all over India. So when you're dealing with this double whammy, it adds an additional dimension of care in community. In the process of working collaboratively, because ICF framework is meaningless if there's no participation. So how do you ensure that when their education level is low? So you have to do a lot of IEC programs, motivational workshops, and in the process of working collaboratively with family, participation has to be seen at different levels. Is the child participating? Is the family participating? And how participatory is community? Participation of a child with a need for special support is definitely our developmental goal, but I'm not saying we are not going to be child-centered. In fact, a pediatrician will never say that, but we have to see the child as nested in the family. So it's a developmental goal involving engagement at different ecological levels. Family-centered services only looks to ameliorate the impairments. It doesn't turn a blind eye to the impairments, but it promotes activities to increase engagement in the social and cultural context. This is what we don't do in our usual hospital settings, and it is difficult for us in a busy clinic to do that. But when a family participates, you are able to work better. It is two people working for one child, parent and the professional, and so the child is going to get the benefit. And parent involvement is very important in a child's care, in decision making, in supporting the services, because there are parent volunteers. We have only a small staff. Then there are occasions when there is a parent volunteer. The old parents sometimes come and advise the new parents, and when the self-help groups are forming, there actually is so much camaraderie and understanding that there is a knowledge transfer even between the parents. So it is almost like a cascade model. Their parents learn from the professionals, and the old parents transfer the knowledge to not only their family members, but also to the new members. So there is a sustainable element of sustainability despite the poverty there in strengthening future services. So this is, of course, my favorite slide, because this is what the ICF framework is about. And many of you, especially pediatricians working in neurodevelopmental disability, know that CanChild actually pioneered this, CanChild in Canada, when it was looking for early intervention in ICF framework. Professor Peter Rosenbaum came up with this idea to make it interesting. He called it the F words. Of course, it grabbed attention naturally, but it meant favorite words, fabulous words. You can substitute that anything with F, but those are fitness, function, friends, family, fun. So if you're looking at body structure and function, we know that, just let me see. Yeah, body structure and function, these are important to keep the child healthy and fit. And whether you're doing your therapy with walking along the bars or making the child sit with AFO on, keeping the legs wide, or whether going through a hospitalization, a surgery, these are all important. This doesn't say that the child doesn't need this. And even here, it's the family that is crucial. And the decision for surgery has to be the family. So there are many things here. And then function. Function is what activity is all about. So this can be in a day-to-day activities. The children enjoy planting, or let's say on Environment Day, children are painting the bottles, and then painted bottles are converted into, planter. So these are many things that children love to do. And can you say this child is not getting hand function exercise here while doing the streamer for Diwali? And when they work together in a community, children actually get to know each other. This child's problem may be different, and this child's problem may be different. The therapist may give a different kind of, but when in preschool atmosphere, they learn a lot from each other. They make friends and they celebrate the festival. So all this is fun. This is what makes participation easy in ICF framework. And as I said, caregivers are very crucial. So they work, this is one of our community staff working with a mother and the child celebrating Diwali. So these are the kind of occasions every NGO does, but perhaps every parents group does, but does not see that it is all placed in this ICF framework, which I'm talking about today. Here, look at it. Here's a sibling. In fact, both the children are affected. And the older kid has been coming to us for some time, and all the games that she learned and which are useful for her to develop in different domains, she's now trying to teach the younger one, who you can see the child trying to stand near the cot. You don't need standing frame all the time, you know. So in a community, you have to be able to adapt, and that is possible if your services are family centered. You can always adapt it to rural area, you can adapt it to urban area, you can adapt it to institution, anywhere else. So, and then you have to, later on they added future as the sixth dimension of this ICF framework. So you know that these children have to go to school, And in your preschool, you try to teach them the concepts that the other children know. Here, of course, we are talking about sustainable development goals. The children made Rakis here with identifying what is important for them. They may not know sustainable development or the theory behind it, but they know water is very important for them. And they know that it is fun to tie friendship bands. So you're introducing concepts very early. This is early child care and development. And I would like to sort of end with, telling what Professor Peter Rosenbaum, who actually was my mentor for the brief period when I was in Canada. And in fact, there's one editorial he's just written, some of you can read it, where he talks about to enhance function and promote children's development. In fact, he says, we forgot for a while, so focused on our interventions, so focused on recording our interventions on camera to show whether this intervention works or that intervention works. We're looking at all that. But we developmental pediatricians forgot the first word in developmental pediatrics or developmental interventions. We forgot development, that is the child development. So he says, even in all children who are not developing typically, or within quotes, people say not developing normally, every child has the potential to develop and progress when allowed to use their capacity to their advantage. And this is something parents can do better than all of us professionals, because they are with the children for a longer time. And with this, I thank you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sunanda, for your brief insights about the ICF model. Somewhere I went on to my college days, back to the ICF model, which we had learned during the CBR lectures. So yes, coming on to the briefing of the lecture, ma'am, definitely family is the only constant for the child. For every child throughout their life, family remains the only constant. Although the environment might change, the physical, the social, and the sensory environment of the child might keep on changing through the years, but family is the only thing which is going to remain constant for the child. Also, the optimal child functioning only will occur if there is a supportive family and community support. So that is a wonderful point which you have made out over here. We also saw the ICF framework in detail about what, when, how, whom to be taken care of. We saw a few definitions over there with respect to impairment, disability, handicapness, also the activity participation, activity limitation, and participation restrictions as well. There was a wonderful image which you displayed, wherein the child was in the center and there were microsystems, the mesosystems, the exosystems, and the macrosystems around the child, revolving around the child. That was a wonderful insight as well. And always there is, we measure parents, whether the goals are being achieved or no. And you introduced us to MPOC 20, which can also measure the family-centered approach being done in by the professional end or no. So that was also very insightful. And yes, participation of family is very important. As you rightly said at the end, we actually, in our interventions, have forgot the word development, which is supported by the 6 Fs of the Can Child adaptation. You had shown an image which included fun, family, friends, function. So all those Fs are really important to sum up the early intervention. Thank you so much for so detailed analysis, framework, and a very nice presentation put forward. Although this is a very theoretical topic, but I'm sure you made it very easy for our parents to understand. Thank you so much, Dr. Sunanda. We have a few questions for you, madam, before we go. So there is this stigma attached in the society with respect to my child is not developing as per his age. My child is not a typically developing child. Sometimes this stigma is also present amongst the family members. So what would be your take over going ahead with the stigma? What can be the parents' role, or how can parents go ahead taking the stigma or kind of clearing their queries from the society?
Yes, the stigma is there, and somewhere some of the terms that people have been using, like gunga, behra.
Yes,
If you
yes,
really look at
yes,
the vernacular,
yes,
in vernacular, you don't come across somebody saying special child or children with special needs. So all these terms
yes.
they have been not been helpful at all in fighting the stigma. But I think what's important is to make everybody aware and everybody feel that stigma is there, but it doesn't mean that your child is not a child first. So you start educating the parent about that. But again, as you said, the same ecological model affects the mother also. You might educate the mother in the workshop that she comes to, but the family may still say, okay, isko kyun school bhejna hai? She won't do much. So you have to educate family, and so you have to create situations and opportunities to involve other family members as well. And it varies from family to family depending on the education level of the family. Sometimes it's easy, but we try to have both parents whenever possible, father, because in many joint families, I think the mothers or the in-laws generation readily listen to the son. So generally you have to work on the whole family to change these attitudes. And if a family starts accepting, if the family starts taking a child to the market or the temple or whatever, soon people get familiar with this child. Now, we don't see any child with disability in a park. So many children, when they start school, uh, the children who are in school actually look at this child with disability with a certain attitude, which borders on stigma. At that young age, of course, no child can be actually faulted with stigma, but it happens. It happens. And then, so the us and them, we, all of us professionals, all caregivers have a responsibility to fighting that stigma. And again, it has to be in the public education domain as well. It'll take time, but I think it is a part of early intervention for me.
Wonderful answer, madam. Thank you so much. That we have to always remember development is what we are here for, and it should not be stopping or being obstructed by any means. So that was very nice, ma'am. One more question we have, ma'am. You might be getting many children for follow-ups after therapies. There might be few children who might be showing improvements. You might be seeing few children who have actually developed, have gone one level ahead. So I would just like you to put some light over improvement versus development theory. What exactly parents should be looking ahead? They should be looking ahead improvement, or they should be expecting development for their children, ma'am?
Both. I think both go hand in hand. Improvement is something you can show with as a short-term goal. So when we are going with goal-directed therapies, we definitely need to show that improvement, that little progress matters a lot. If parent knows that, with this kind of an exercise, there is a difference for the child, or with this chair, when the child is wearing AFO, the position is getting altered. So that little improvement that is discernible to the parent has to be there as the first few steps. In fact, the parents don't come to us for the child development. They've come to us for correction of the impairment. So we have to attend to the impairment, but alongside take this opportunity, because you know that what you're doing is only a short-term goal. You cannot, if you follow up this child 10 years hence, without looking at early child development, you will not be able to demonstrate much progress in the child. So I think, as I said, that's where the families really play an important role.
Yes, madam. Thank you so much for the answer. We have one query in the chat box, which would be our last question for our topic. Had put my 3-year-old in play school for 1 month in March. He showed improvement just in 3 weeks, but now as schools and daycares are again closed, is it advisable for online classes for play school, or should we wait for schools to be reopened?
This is a very good question, very interesting question. So I'll have to look at it from a pediatric perspective. And in fact, a child of 3 should not have more than 1 hour of screen time. These are American Academy of Pediatric recommendations that under 2, don't expose your child to any screens, whether it's mobile phone. But today you find that every child, in fact, to divert the child or even to engage the child, mother or father give the child a phone. And we are also trying to teach nursery rhymes on the mobile phone. And so use of technology, I think somebody is going to talk about it later. I think Dr. Sameer Dalwaya has the topic, perhaps I looked at that. And so that is not to be encouraged. But again, as I said, that is as a pediatrician. But as a common sense person working in the community, I may not have much role to play there because the school has been giving that kind of a homework online for preschool. It is not right to do that. If the school can actually give some activities to the parents and say, this is the kind of activity you can do with your children at home, because it's a preschool or preschool and play school. So the parents can take those activities. In fact, we are doing just that in our small project. We give the parents some activities which they can do with not just their child with a disability, but with the other children as well. So the siblings, there is an inclusive activity we can give to the children. And in preschool, you really don't need so much of online education. So I would say it's not a great preschool. Perhaps if parents can wait for it to reopen, that would be great. But if they have to do what the teacher says, they can use their own discretion on how to do it. They can look at it and let the child, give the child some support to do it. We also send some coloring activities and things like that, but the mother can actually help there.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time and expertise. We definitely do appreciate your efforts in this fraternity, community, and rehabilitation field. Thank you for your time once again, ma'am.
Most welcome. And I've been enjoying this. I just switched on to get the flavor of the program, but then I listened to the parents, I listened to the professionals. So I said, okay, what my talk is going to do is address the parents well, but I think professionals may not accept all these theories so easily. But I hope this is just a philosophy and perspectives that I presented. And there's a lot more to the subject than what I covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sunanda. Thank you.
Thank you.